All right, topic today is quartiles. Quartiles is a way to analyze um, and look at the data that we will be looking at coming up here. Quartiles is just another word for quarters. So, for instance, we've already talked about the median before. The median is the middle number, and the median is right at 50% of our data, or it's half of our data, right in the middle, meaning that at the median, 50% of our data is below the median, and then 50% of our data is above the median. That is our second quartile, our second quarter. The ones we haven't talked about yet are lower quartile, which is often called the first quartile, and upper quartile, which is often called the third quartile. The lower quartile represents the spot at 25% of the data. And basically, the lower quartile is the median of everything below the median. And then we have the upper quartile, which sometimes is called the third quartile, and that is where 75% of the data is at. So basically, if we look at the lower quartile, 25% would be below, and 75% would be above, up to the 100% here. So we're basically just breaking the data into quarters, and we'll show you how this works. Here we have a 7-number set, and the numbers are in order. Whenever we're analyzing data, it's always good just to start by putting the numbers in order, and we have the numbers in order here, which is good. The very first thing to identifying the quartiles is figuring out where the second quartile is, or figuring out where the median is, which should be easy to do. The median would just be the middle number. So, for instance, I have 3 numbers here, I have 3 numbers here, so my middle number is going to be 30. That is my median, which is also called the second quartile. Basically what we're saying here is this is where 50% of the data is at. So 50% of the data is down here, 50% of the data is up here. Now we need the first quartile and we need the third quartile. Let's start with the first quartile, or the lower quartile. The median is not included when we're doing quartiles here, so we're looking at all the other numbers. So here's my numbers right here. All I'm basically looking at to find quartiles is the middle of what we have left here. Okay, so if I go 8, 14, 22, I've got 3 numbers. The middle of that is going to be 14. So 14 is going to be my lower quartile, also called the first quartile. This is where 25%, or our 25% mark. So we have 25% of the data below this, and then of course 100% would be up here, so 25 plus 75 of our data would be above. Now we need the upper quartile. The upper quartile is past the 50%, the middle of the data that's left. So of course we have 3 numbers, so it's really easy to pick out the middle number. Our middle number is going to be 61. This is going to be our upper quartile, which is also referred to as the third quartile. This is the point where we have 75% of our data. And then, of course, at the end would be 100% of our data. So all you have to do to find the quartiles, first of all, find the simplest one, which is just the median, or the second quartile. And then look below that, look above that, and find the middle 2 numbers. Alright, here we have another set of numbers that I've put in order. We are going to find all 3 of our quartiles here. So I need the 50% mark first. I need the median. Now, in this set of data, I've got an even number of numbers. So that means I'm going to have 4 numbers here, and I'm going to have 4 numbers here, or I'm going to have 2 middle numbers. So my median is directly in between there. So I'll just draw a line here. My median between 10 and 16 is going to be the number 13. That's going to be my median, which is also called the second quartile. And that's also 50% of our data. If you have trouble coming up with the median or the quartiles when you have 2 numbers, all you have to do, if you can't think about what the exact center number is, find the average of those 2 numbers. For instance, if I add those 2 things together, 10 plus 16 is 26. average would be there's 2 of them, so I'm going to divide by 2. 26 divided by 2 is 13. That's an easy way to do it, just in case. So now I'll focus on my lower quartile. And I said for the lower quartile, you do not include the median. So you include every number that's not the median below the median. And then for the upper quartile, we'll use all the numbers that are above the median. So we're going to use all these numbers right here. So I need for the lower quartile, the first quartile, the middle number out of these 4. I wouldn't have a middle number because if I start going off the outsides here, I'm left with 2 middle numbers. So again, my lower quartile is going to be what's between these 2. Okay, and this one should be easy. The lower quartile between 8 and 9 is going to be 8.5 or 8.5. So this is my, and I'll just put LQ, my lower quartile, which is also called the first quarter, or the first quartile, which represents 25%. Now if I go up here to my upper quartile, I look at the numbers above my median. We're not including the median. The numbers above my median. And it looks like we've got an even number of numbers still. So I would have those 2 on the outside, and I would have 2 middle numbers. Can't have 2 numbers for the quartile, so we have to have 1. We have to find the middle of these 2, and this one should be easy too. If I do this, I know between 17 and 18 is going to be 17.5. So my UQ, or my upper quartile, or my third quartile, is going to be 17.5. And this is where 75% of my data is going to be. And remember, if for whatever reason you couldn't figure out how far or what's exactly in the middle of 17 and 18, you could just find the average of the 2. If I add those together, I believe I get 35. 35 divided by 2, we're going to get a 1 and a 7, and then we'd have a remainder 1. And then if we kept going with my 0.0, I'm going to eventually end up with 17.5 if I divide that out. Alright, here's my next set. We're going to start by identifying the second quartile, the second quarter, or 50% of the data. I've got 6 numbers here. So if I just start crossing off on the outsides, well, there's 2 here and 2 here, which is going to leave me with 2 middle numbers. So I need for the median to find directly what's in between 8 and 11. I think between 8 and 11 would be 9.5. But if I didn't know that, remember you could just add 8 plus 11 and divide by 2 to get the middle number. So I know my middle number is going to be 9.5. Okay. There's my median. That's 50% of my data. That's the second quartile. Okay, that's my median. Now I need the lower quartile and the upper quartile. Remember, with the quartiles, you don't include the median for the upper and the lower. So I've got all these numbers that are not the median. Up below the median, above the median. This one's going to be pretty easy. The middle of these numbers, of course, would be 5. So this would be my lower quartile. Quartile 1 is what we call it, the first quartile, which would be 25% of my data. Then if I look down at this end, an easy middle number also would be 15. Get down here, that would be my upper quartile, or my third quartile, or my third quarter, which would be 75% of the data.